To that moment in court making global headlines tonight, a convicted war criminal suddenly drinking poison and then shouting a message to the judge.
Courtrooms are frequently the scene of legal disputes rather than violence. However, there are times when the situation takes an unexpected turn, and the inmates find themselves in the spotlight of their courtroom drama. Here are 8 convicts who were killed in court number 1. Number 1, David Paradiso. David Paradiso's unfortunate path was even worse when he became involved in a judicial saga. It's a fascinating story of courtroom turmoil and violence that began with his arrest in December 2006 for a heinous crime, the suspected demise of his girlfriend, Eileen Pelt. Their relationship had just lasted for a few weeks when a tragedy occurred in the backseat of a car driven by Deborah, Paradiso's mother. Deborah later claimed that she had not heard the couple argue until that fatal day. However, in an odd act, David fatally stabbed his lover in the neck, stating that if he did not act first, she would take his life. The events that followed were even more confusing. Undaunted by the seriousness of his crime, Paradiso compelled his mother to drive him from Loy, California to a place 15 miles distant in Amador County, where he disposed of Eileen's lifeless body along a road. Those who learned of these deeds were astounded by their callousness. To explain the unexplained, Paradiso's defense team claimed that he was under the effect of methamphetamine during this encounter. He was captured and charged with the crime, nevertheless. However, during his trial in 2009, the narrative took an even more bizarre turn. It is critical to establish context prior to this trial. David's mother, Deborah Paradiso, had been profoundly concerned about her son's mental health in the weeks leading up to the court hearings. She noticed indicators of a potential collapse in him, such as a sense of sorrow in his eyes. Furthermore, she suspected he held a firearm, which she reported to authorities. A search of his holding cell turned up no evidence of a weapon, so her suspicions were dismissed. Deborah Paradiso later claimed that her dismissal contributed to the catastrophic events that followed. David Paradiso testified about the death of his girlfriend during his trial in March 2009. He did, however, give a different story than his prior statements, discarding his argument that he acted in fear for his life. He stated this time that he took Eileen's life because he thought she deserved not to live. This dramatic shift in his story was both intriguing and concerning. A pause was ordered during this critical trial, presided over by San Juan County Superior Court Judge Cinda Fox, after Deborah, David's mother, left the courtroom in tears. She had spoken out against her son taking the stand, expressing worries about his mental health. This outburst caused a hiccup in the proceedings. During this little respite, David Paradiso made his move. He came up behind Judge Fox and attacked Fox with an unidentifiable sharp weapon. He stabbed the judge numerous times and attacked her physically as well. Several courtroom visitors attempted to intercede, but it was Lowy Detective Eric Bradley who grabbed his gun and shot Paradiso. Despite her injuries, Judge Fox was successfully evacuated from the courtroom on a stretcher and recovered well. David Paradiso passed away as a result of the gunshot wounds he sustained during the event. This unexpected turn of events left a path of destruction in its wake. David's family, particularly his mother Deborah and brother Aaron Paradiso, were overcome with sadness and stated their conviction that the tragedy may have been avoided if law officials had handled his declining mental health differently. Aaron said that his brother suffered from paranoid schizophrenia, a confirmed and well-known illness. He contended that David should not have been called to the stand in his current mental state. Number 2, Klaus Grabowski. Klaus Grabowski. His story began in Germany, where police identified him as a repeat criminal. Subsequently, he was arrested for strangling a child and was sentenced to probation. One may have thought that this close call would teach Grabowski a lesson, but his malevolent tendencies remained. A few years later, he was arrested again for crimes related to children. While Grabowski first received light treatment in court, the authorities were not as merciful this time. Grabowski was on the verge of committing his most heinous act, setting the stage for a memorable courtroom brawl. Marianne Bach, born on June 3, 1950, was the pivotal person in this horrific story. Her upbringing in West Germany was difficult, with a violent father and a mother who abandoned her when she was a teenager. She became a mother at the age of 16, having to give up her first kid for adoption. At the age of 18, she had another kid, whom she had to give up after being attacked just before giving birth. On November 14, 1972, Marianne gave birth to her third and final child, a beautiful girl called Anna. Marianne was raising Anna on her own, so she worked as a waitress to make ends meet. Their lives, however, remained unsettled. Marianne's long hours at the bar kept her away from Anna, and several of her acquaintances saw that Anna frequently looked after herself, even sleeping at the bar where her mother worked. The sad sequence of events began on May 5, 1980, when Marianne and Anna got into a violent disagreement before Anna left for school. The 7-year-old, who was heartbroken and upset, opted not to go to school that day. Klaus Grabowski, a neighbor from their apartment complex, offered her the opportunity to play with his cats in his apartment while she departed, claiming to go to school. Once Anna was at Grabowski's apartment, he assaulted her for hours. Surprisingly, he then strangled her with his fiancé's tights, brutally ending her young life. Grabowski did not escape punishment. When his fiancée found the heinous reality, she promptly called the cops. When officials arrived at the canal's edge, they discovered Anna's lifeless body and quickly caught Grabowski. On March 3, 1981, the trial began, with Grabowski seeking to shift guilt onto the little child he had violently stolen from the world. He said Anna attempted to seduce him, demanded money, and threatened to expose him if he did not cooperate. He depicted himself as the victim in his twisted story. This terrible show of victim blaming enraged Marianne, who had already been through unbearable suffering. She made the decision to take affairs into her own hands. Marianne carried out her task on March 6, 1981, at an apparently normal court session. Her clothing concealed a .22 caliber Beretta pistol. She responded quickly when she saw Grabowski in the courtroom and fired 7 rounds at him. 6 of the bullets were successful, culminating in Grabowski's demise. A video of the shooting revealed Marianne's determined manner, expressing no emotion even when others interfered to detain her. She exhibited no regret. Marianne received a 6-year jail term for manslaughter, of which she served just 3. She passed away due to pancreatic cancer in 1996 and was buried next to her adored daughter, Anna. Number 3. Slobodan Praljak. This incident follows a different route, concentrating on the case of Slobodan Praljak, who took his own life during his sentencing hearing in 2017. Let's look at how Praljak ended up on trial and what motivated him to take such dramatic measures. Slobodan Praljak was a Bosnian Croat who was born in Yugoslavia in 1945. As he pursued further education, became a professor, and ran an electronic business, his life looked to be pretty conventional. However, during the Croatian War of Independence 1991, his life took a drastic change. Praljak joined the Croatian military and rose to the rank of general, acquiring a pivotal role during the conflict. Nonetheless, his leadership reportedly entailed war crimes, such as attacks on houses of worship, looting, and assaults on people. He was also in command of the infamous drill camp, where Bosniak men faced brutality and mistreatment. Praljak returned to civilian life as a successful businessman after the conflict ended in 1995. He started a production company, a tobacco company, and wrote 25 books, appearing to get his life back on track. However, in the early 2000s, Praljak, along with 5 others, faced war crimes charges brought about by the International Criminal Tribunal for former Yugoslavia. He was indicted on grave accusations after surrendering to authorities, including Geneva Convention breaches, violations of war laws and customs, and crimes against humanity. These claims originated from his high-ranking position throughout the war, when many atrocities were blamed on his men. The ICTY said that Praljak either ordered these crimes or was aware of them, but did not intervene. The trial began in April 2006 and continued for around 7 years. Praljak was found guilty and sentenced to 7 years in jail in 2013. He contested the ruling, claiming innocence. In November 2017, a court in The Hague maintained sections of his sentence while dismissing others. His 20-year prison sentence, however, remained unaffected. Surprisingly, he had already served around 13 years in jail, leaving him with 7 years until eventual release. Praljak, on the other hand, was passionately opposed to the ruling. Following the pronouncement by the judge, he made a stunning remark in the courtroom. He sipped a liquid from a little brown container he carried with him and said, "I just drank poison." The court ordered the curtains to be drawn, and Praljak was quickly transferred to the hospital. Tragically, he passed away as a result of heart failure. Praljak's demise generated various issues, the most pressing of which was how he received the poison. The security checks at the courthouse are stringent, making it extremely difficult for anybody to bring poison inside. Despite extensive examinations, the source of the toxin remained unknown. This perplexing part of the case perplexed many people. Praljak's demise elicited a range of reactions. Some former ICTY judges saw it as a tragedy since it denied war victims the justice they sought. Praljak's demise left a complicated legacy and a slew of unresolved issues, casting a pall over an already difficult chapter of history. Number 4. Sael Angelau. Sael Angelau's spectacular courtroom demise is a bizarre story. Consider a criminal dying in a courtroom because he attempted to assault someone while on trial for a series of violent crimes. Everything seems too strange to be real, yet everything happened exactly as recounted in the instance of Angelau. Angelau's childhood is partly shrouded in mystery, with little information accessible about him. What is known is that he had links to the Tongan Crips gang, a prominent criminal organization. This gang operated in various U.S. states, as well as in New Zealand, Australia, and Canada. Angelau's trip into the courtroom, where he eventually passed away, was the result of a 29-count racketeering indictment that targeted 17 gang members. Angelau, who was 25 at the time, was named in this indictment, which focused on organized crime. Angelau and his fellow gang members faced a new set of indictments for their alleged criminal acts in 2014. The series of circumstances that led to Angelau's terrible demise is what makes this case so compelling. First, he found himself on trial in a newly built courthouse that had just opened its doors a week earlier. Second, there was a breakdown in communication between the sitting judge and the marshal in charge of Angelau's courtroom presence. According to the FBI, this oversight was critical. Individuals appearing in court are typically shackled to avoid any efforts to harm others. Court marshals are notified whether or not a defendant is chained. Because the new courthouse lacked key settings, such as table coverings, that would have marked Angelau's unfettered status, several marshals were unaware that he was unrestrained. Angelo took advantage of this error to carry out a risky scheme. Angelo was in the courtroom. As the witness took the stand, Angelo pulled a pen from his seat at the table and unleashed an attack on the witness. A court-martial quickly intervened, ordering Angelau to put down the pen. The witness escaped Angelau's attack by running to safety. Several others in the courtroom hurried to interfere, hoping to stop Angelo's attack. Angelo's aggressive plans, however, were immediately thwarted by a court-martial who used his weapon. Angelo received 4 bullets in the chest. He was quickly rushed to the hospital but passed away as a result of his injuries. Notably, the court-martial in command of these activities was not identified and was not prosecuted for any misconduct. This, however, was not the end of the story. Angelau's family filed a wrongful death case against the marshal and the U.S. Marshal Service, accusing them of excessive force. They claimed that the marshal's 4 rounds were excessive force. The case received national attention, and in 2018, a court ordered the release of the shooting video to the public, ending a 4-year period in which the tape had remained unreleased. Robert Sykes, the family's attorney, claimed that the final 3 rounds were fired when Angelau was already down, resulting in excessive force. Judge Dowell, however, disagreed with this view and dismissed the case. He said that Angelau was plainly attempting to assault the witness and that the marshal's actions were required to avert damage since Angelau had just seconds before launching his attack. Following that, the family decided not to challenge the ruling, and the matter gradually disappeared from public view. Number 5. Jonathan Schmitz. Few courtroom cases have been as frightening and emotionally fraught as Jonathan Schmitz's attempt to take his own life. This terrible incident occurred in 1995 during a high-profile trial that received national notice. It's a narrative about the complexity of mental health, the rigors of public scrutiny, and the life-changing impact of a single event on everyone involved. Jonathan Schmitz's meteoric rise began with a guest appearance on the Jenny Jones program, a famous daytime talk program noted for its sensationalized fare. Schmitz, a calm and humble man, was asked to the program by a producer who explained that a hidden admirer wished to expose their name. Schmitz had no idea that the admirer would turn out to be Scott Amadeur, another guest on the show. Amadeur admitted his affection for Schmitz in front of a live studio audience during the episode's recording, indicating that he had a crush on him. The audience reacted with laughter and applause, but Schmitz was plainly uncomfortable and perplexed. The piece was broadcast on national television, exposing Schmitz to mockery and disgrace. On March 1995, 3 days after the filming, Schmitz returned to Amadeur's mobile home and fatally shot him. The sad tragedy pushed both men into the public limelight. Schmitz was arrested and charged with murder in the first degree. The case became a symbol of reality television's ethical limitations and the possible repercussions of public humiliation. Schmitz's mental condition became a significant source of dispute as the trial progressed. His defense claimed that the public humiliation on the Jenny Jones show drove him over the edge, causing him to suffer from melancholy and hopelessness. They said Schmitz was not in his right mind when he committed the crime and should only face a lesser charge. Schmitz's trial took an unexpected and tragic turn in March 1996. He pulled out a revolver and attempted to take his own life in the courtroom. The pandemonium and fear that ensued are impossible to describe. Spectators, attorneys, and court officials were all stunned as Schmitz pointed the revolver at his own head and fired. Schmitz miraculously survived the self-inflicted gunshot wound, but his actions that day exacerbated an already problematic case. He was taken to the hospital right away and had life-saving surgery. The event sparked concerns about the sufficiency of courtroom security and the treatment of mentally ill individuals. Schmitz's mental health came under much more scrutiny after this attempt. The court-appointed psychiatrists examined him and determined that he had depression and a personality disorder. Schmitz was eventually found guilty of second-degree murder in Amadeur's demise. The jury agreed with his defense's claim concerning the influence of the Jenny Jones show on his mental condition, resulting in a lower conviction than the initial first-degree crime allegation. Schmitz received a sentence of 25 to 50 years in jail. Number 6. Brian Nichols. The shooting in the Atlanta courtroom in March 2005 was a shocking and sad episode in American legal history. Brian Nichols was at the core of this terrible episode, and his actions that day would echo well beyond the walls of the Fulton County Courthouse in downtown Atlanta, Georgia. Brian Nichols' story begins long before that fatal day. Nichols, who was born in 1971, had a rough life that included a shattered home and run-ins with the authorities. Despite these obstacles, he graduated from high school and briefly attended college. However, as he became involved in illegal activities, particularly drug-related felonies, his life took a darker turn. Nichols' criminal background finally resulted in a trial in 2005. Nichols was being led to the Fulton County Courthouse for his trial in March 2005. Nobody expected this normal excursion to set off a terrible chain of events. Nichols started the rampage by overpowering a deputy sheriff, grabbing her gun and taking her life. He then went to the courtroom and shot both the presiding judge, Roland Barnes, and a court reporter, Julianne Brandow. Both the victims lost their lives in the shooting. Nichols escaped the courthouse after committing these heinous crimes, igniting a large manhunt and leaving Atlanta in terror and panic. Nichols embarked on a 26-hour spree that involved carjackings, further shootings, and a hostage scenario. He managed to avoid capture while instilling fear across the city. The sheer boldness and savagery of his deeds gripped the nation and dominated headlines as law enforcement authorities rushed to apprehend him. Nichols' reign of terror came to an end when he kidnapped a woman in her own apartment. During the confrontation with the police, however, Nichols made an unexpected choice. He let his prisoner go unhurt and turned himself into authorities. The motivation for this surprising capitulation remains unknown. Some speculate that Nichols had a change of heart, while others say he was tired and recognized his arrest was unavoidable. Brian Nichols' following trial for the courtroom crimes was a high-profile case that received extensive media coverage. Nichols was convicted of all counts in November 2008, notwithstanding his original defense claims of insanity. He received repeated life sentences without the possibility of parole. The Atlanta courtroom shooting left an indelible mark on the city, the families of the victims, and the criminal justice system. It sparked concerns about courthouse security since Nichols was able to obtain a firearm within the halls of justice. In reaction to the occurrence, numerous courthouses around the country increased security to avert similar catastrophes. Furthermore, the case brought to light concerns with mental health and the criminal justice system. Nichols's defense maintained that he was not in his right mind when he committed the murders, raising questions about the court system's care and examination of people with mental health issues. Number 7. Michael Marin. The tale of Michael Marin is a remarkable and bewildering one. Michael Marin's life began with all the trappings of a bright future. He began his career on Wall Street with a degree from Brigham Young University and a law degree from Yale, working for prominent firms such as Lehman Brothers, Merrill Lynch, and Salomon Brothers. His successful job provided him with enormous cash, allowing him to live a lavish lifestyle. He had many luxurious properties, as well as an art collection that included works by luminaries such as Picasso. Marin's exploits brought him all over the world, and he even managed to conquer Mount Everest in the early 2000s. He appeared to be living the ideal American dream, although an extravagantly wealthy one, as a married man with 4 children. Marin's problems began when he fell behind on mortgage payments for his $2.5 million property in Phoenix, Arizona. Desperate to save his property, he tried everything, including attempting to raffle it off at a charity benefit. Despite his attempts, none of them were successful, and his desperation deepened. This need finally forced him to perform a daring and unusual crime. Michael Marin's house was devoured by flames and soon collapsed around him on that tragic day. Marin came from the heart of this raging flame, a very perplexing sight. As perplexing as it may sound, this bizarre incident occurred in actuality. When police got to the scene, they discovered the former Wall Street broker dressed not to escape a blazing skyscraper, but for a day at sea. The big concern was, why would someone use diving gear to escape a house fire? Marin had devised an unusual scheme. In order to avoid having to make mortgage payments, he staged the fire. On paper, his plan appeared simple: burn down the house, flee while using scuba gear to breathe, and then collect the insurance money to get out of financial trouble. His strategy, however, would soon fall apart. Several variables threw a kink in Marin's plan. The first red flag was the easily arranged dive gear. Who maintains a completely completed diving suit in their bedroom, ready to use in case of fire? Second, the fire investigation indicated that the fire was intentionally set in 4 separate areas around the house, with phone books utilized to ensure its quick spread. It became clear that this was not a simple case of a home fire, but rather a deliberate act. Michael Marin's financial problems, as well as his mistaken attempt to fix them, have left him facing serious repercussions. Arson and attempted insurance fraud were serious offenses with severe punishments. Marin faced a jail term ranging from 7 to 21 years if found guilty when his court procedures began in May 2012. It was a bleak scenario with no apparent way out. Marin's fate was sealed in June 2012 when he was found guilty of his charges. The decision took him hard, and he can be seen responding with anguish in a courtroom video. His face became crimson after consuming something, and he drank from a sports bottle before falling. Panic arose as courtroom members raced to save him, but their attempts were futile. Marin was rushed to the hospital where he subsequently passed away. Number 8. William Stryer. Now this story is a little different but needs focus as well. In 2003, William Stryer was at the heart of a dramatic and violent encounter outside a courthouse that would permanently change the path of his life. Stryer opened fire on Gerald Curry, a lawyer, on that fateful day in a filmed incident that left Curry injured and Stryer facing a life sentence plus 25 years in prison. The events of that day were filmed by a TV cameraman who happened to be covering the murder trial of actor Robert Blake, which had nothing to do with Stryer's case. The video showed a frightening sequence in which Stryer, armed with 2 weapons, fired 5 rounds into Curry's neck, arms, and shoulder. Curry bobbed, weaved, and hunched beneath a slim tree in a desperate fight for survival, his life hanging in the balance. Streyer's attempted murder conviction in January marked the start of a judicial path that would lead to his life sentence. The reason for this heinous attack, as revealed during the trial, was Streyer's deep resentment and dissatisfaction with Curry over the administration of a $98,000 trust fund that Streyer had received following an accident in which he was hit by a car. This obviously out-of-control money argument eventually motivated Streyer to perform a horrific deed. After the incident, Streyer strolled away from the scene with an unsettling composure, pocketing his firearms and walking away. "That's what you get for taking my money?" he said as he exited the courtroom and into the thoughts of those who witnessed the horrible episode. It was a startling display of savagery, and the consequences for Streyer would be severe. During the trial, however, the defense team gave a different viewpoint, saying that Streyer thought his trust had been terribly abused, causing him to think he had been harmed. They said that Streyer lost his mind during the incident, claiming that his actions were motivated by a strong feeling of injustice rather than malice. Gerald Curry, the lawyer who took the brunt of Streyer's rage, expressed delight at his assailant's life sentence. Streyer, in his opinion, was a dangerous person, and the decision assured that he would never be free again. The attack had left Curry with not just physical wounds, but also a lasting feeling of the menace Streyer posed. William Streyer's story is a sobering reminder of the combustible junction of personal grudges and severe acts of violence. It calls into question one's ability to cope with perceived injustices, as well as the possibility that these grievances will evolve into acts of attempted crime.